Or is this acceptable for an early morning after NACIS night out? Okay. So thank you for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see so many faces here. I also want to thank the other presenters in this session for talking about databases and how we can use the multitude of cartographic information that exists to better our work with making maps. I'm here today to talk a bit about the human resources that exist that can help you make better maps. I'm particularly focusing on the role that libraries and librarians play in geography and GIS education. For those of you who haven't yet worked with a librarian, although I'm sure many of you have, we function to provide many sorts of support for people who are interested in cartography and geography. We have repositories that hold many different kinds of maps that can be used as the base for your research. We also are repositories for spatial data in many cases that can help support and provide access to some of the great databases that we heard about in this work as well. We also often support access to licenses for the tools that you use to make maps. These are some of the things that you're probably already very familiar with and work with on a regular basis. What libraries also do, however, is provide that human element of support. We help students and faculty learn how to analyze and work with spatial data so that they can create effective maps that are also effective tools for communication. This involves doing training with students and also community members or other members of our university who need support to learn how to use both open source and licensed tools. We provide in-depth consultation for those, particularly from outside of geography departments where no support exists, because as we all know, maps are very awesome. Everybody wants to work with them. And when everybody needs support and they don't have that in the department, they get to come to the libraries because we do provide that interdisciplinary support that we can teach spatial literacy in many different contexts. We can teach skills to many different levels of learners, and we can bring those elements together to make sure that we're actually not only reaching people on a larger level, but also where they exist within their discipline. And because, not every university has a geography department, CMU does not have a geography department, our library had to look for other ways to best support people who were coming to us to try to help build maps. One way that we decided we could do this was by bringing together people not only at our own university with my colleague Jessica Benner, but also working with people from across the continental United States, Canada, also some lucky individuals from Spain and New Zealand who got to join our group, to have conversations about what libraries can offer in terms of general education, how we can tackle critical issues of spatial literacy, particularly from, again, that cross-disciplinary perspective where we have students who might not have heard about not only the basic principles of map making, but even what latitude and longitude are, and really build that support out. Our objectives were not only to create this community of practice, but were also to intensely provide resources so that other librarians who are trying to start GIS services at their libraries could have ways to engage with pedagogy that was previously created. I don't know if you're familiar with librarians, but we are very busy. We are often tasked to do many things, so having support resources that are not only vetted by other librarians, but have been shown to be used in multiple case studies at different universities for different disciplines is very helpful. Also because as librarians, we can't be expected to learn all of the different ways to make maps. Throughout this conference, we've heard many different ways that you can do that. It would be impossible for just one person to reach that kind of success. So how do we provide access to different librarians to learn that information? And finally, we also wanted to provide access to a place where we could create a communal understanding about what it means to be spatially literate, what it means for our students to be able to say, I've taken a GIS course and I know what I'm talking about, not only to make sure that their work is effective, but to also make sure that students are employable and their employers, when they hire them, know what that means. We got a grant to get started in 2020. We had one in-person meeting in Pittsburgh. Quickly, we moved virtual for reasons that will remain obvious. And this allowed us actually to broaden our network. We were able to make connection with many different librarians, as I mentioned, across the United States, But it also allowed for librarians from different contexts to feel like they had time to come and speak with us. So we got to have the involvement of more map librarians, librarians who were subject specialists who might not be specifically focused on GIS, but had people who were asking them about how to make maps. So we were able then to inform our practice more broadly. This led to us now hosting for 2 years monthly meetings every Thursday. I will invite you now to come and join us, but I'll also invite you again, so don't worry. The topics we discussed not only include what I've already mentioned, but also include what is our role as a librarian in general, how do we support practice, how do we pick out what future topics are not only at the future of our field as librarianship, but what's the future of geography and cartography that our students are going to be tasked with, and how can we help prepare lessons that meet those challenges? How do we work on outreach? I'm always jealous of our disciplinary partners because they have students who attend courses and they come to them to learn things. Librarians aren't always as fortunate. We do have those who seek out our services, but we also often have to promote that we do this kind of support work by attending conferences, but also by trying to meet our students where they are in their departments, offering different suites of workshops or teaching materials, and determining what exactly it is our students need to feel like they've gained something from the experience, whether that's skills, always the goal, but also playing around with different types of certification. We also work to make sure that we're building out different resources in pedagogy. I think I'm going to talk more about that. Cover coming in the presentation. For those of you who haven't had a lot of opportunity to work with librarians, this is some information about who we are. We're people who are very engaged, want to be able to support you in your practice. We have a lot of knowledge drawn from our own disciplinary backgrounds, which are varied. I, for example, am an archaeologist, one of the many who made an exodus out of departmental work into alternate academic spaces. But we also have people who are geographers. We have people who've come from the humanities. When we can, we have people who come from the sciences. So we do have a broad base of knowledge that can help support your research. And we are very eager and engaged in trying also to learn to support the access to the tools you need. Things that I've learned as a librarian include Python, so I could support students who were coming to me to ask questions about how to build maps in Python. Also learning more about open proprietary tools like QGIS and Leaflet that support also the work that we do in licensed products like ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online to make sure that our students are able to meet all of the challenges that they face. And this includes also building the skills that we need to support individual researchers, meet them where they are with those needs and those disciplines, but also in terms of making sure that our teaching is effective. So because we are building these broad base of skills, we're also then able to develop pedagogy that can be translated into different departmental courses, but we also then work on individualized workshops or workshop series that look at developing skills over a long array. We do also have the opportunity to have one-on-one consultations where we're able to observe a learner over time, which also gives us a unique perspective that might not be readily available to people who are teaching large geography classes. Because we're working one-on-one with a student or one-on-one with a researcher, we're able to pinpoint where problems come up naturally through the course of our consultation services. Also, because again, not everyone's going to automatically think of the library, we have a plethora of asynchronous resources that we can make available to help support not only instruction in a course, but also engagement with broader GIS principles over time. One of the things we need to look forward to doing next is how we can build out our support on a long array. Because we have come together as a community of practice, we have been learning that there are a lot of different ways that people view what spatial literacy means, which is a fun question, something that's more been dealt with at a K through 12 educational level, and still something that for alternate academic spaces like libraries, centers, hasn't been as deeply discussed. Indeed, we need to be able to meet more frequently as a community, to be able to share our knowledge about what our students are asking when it comes to geography, what questions they're being asked by their departments as well, in terms of defining what skill training they need. In addition, we're also looking to try to have a shared point of touch points for what skills our students need to be able to not only meet success in geography classes, but like CMU where we have no geography department, what touch points they need to be able to meet with different certifications that exist. How do we create a common understanding about what it means to engage in library practice? And a lot of that also comes from our work with you. So as I mentioned, through individual consultations with students and faculty, we are learning about what skills you're being asked to do or what skills you're excited about. But it would also be very helpful for us to hear from you all about how we can better prepare students to be engaged members of your classes. Also, how we can engage students with internet access at the hotel conference. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it's not a real conference until one presenter has like tons of technical difficulty, right? So I also know that I'm going a bit quicker through this just from stress, so I apologize for that. I also have to say that one of the things we're very invested in that I've mentioned before is making these materials, but also making these materials available. So we know that libraries aren't the only spaces that are going to be finding asynchronous materials useful. They can be used in courses, specifically when librarians often work with faculty to develop materials they can teach with a course, or work with a high school teacher to develop materials specifically for their course. Both of these cases I've heard presented at the conference. But there's not always a place where we can share these resources with one another. Because university centers are often islands unto themselves, and there's not a large history of librarians engaging across GIS practice until very recently, there hasn't yet been a source where we can all look to for engaging with those materials, like I said. If I'm a new GIS librarian, I've been asked to set up a department in addition to the 3 other jobs that I do. How can I quickly skill train? How can I quickly get materials that can help support my students? Well, one answer to this question is to engage with a resource that we've created as part of a consortium agreement between the role of libraries in geography and GIS education, which is the role group I'm speaking at today, but also with a group from NACIS, who's focused on spatial literacy, to build the IMGIS, finally an acronym that I can enjoy and engage with, that looks at how we can make materials available for practitioners, where we can make them open source and engageable. Another thing that we also want to support with libraries, and I so appreciate it was mentioned in the last talk, was engaging with ideas of data management and licensing. And it was a big laugh, but it's so important. And those are the kinds of things that we also like to sneak into our practice as well. And so having resources that already have the idea of data management, licensing embedded, reproducibility embedded, is something that we want to encourage people to share through IMGIS, so that we can not only prepare our students for dealing with GIS, but also for dealing with GIS in a way that is reproducible and effective. So far, not a lot of submissions, I must acknowledge. The rollout has been an interesting process through COVID, but we're hoping to not only get more librarians to be engaging with this resource, but also faculty, departmental, people who work in industry, particularly people who work with industry, from my perspective, as we're preparing our students to go and join you. So any feedback we can get from you all is very appreciated. Oops, okay, let's go. If you want to learn more about our group, we do have a meeting once a month, which you're more than welcome to join. We're mainly getting in touch with librarians, so if you are eager to learn more about how you can best use our services or how we can best support your work, please come out. We also have a special issue that we've just published that's about spatial literacy from a librarian perspective, which I think would be very helpful for people to engage in, and we want feedback on as well, because obviously our realm of what spatial literacy means has to tie very closely into what it means for you. And we also have a white paper that defines some of our recent work. And the outline of detailed of these conversations that I quickly sprinted through between technical difficulties. All right. But as I said, we really want people to join us. Our last meeting was yesterday, which doesn't really set up an inviting structure for you all to come. So you'll just have to put it in your calendars now to remember to come visit us on November 17th. And thank you all for listening. If you have more questions, I know a 10-minute presentation is very short and also slightly chaotic in my case. So I would love to engage with you after the talk, and thank you for your time.